Welcome, MMA fans, to Pancration MMA. Today I'm going to be giving my picks, my prognostications, my predictions for UFC 303, Pereira versus Prohaska 2. I'm super excited to watch this one. I love both of these fighters. They are money. They are action nonstop every time I see them fight. Pereira only has, I think, 12 fights total in his MMA career, but's already held two different championship belts. And Prohaska, every time you see him come into the ring, he's gonna be bringing his unorthodox style of fighting, and he's gonna be spinning elbows, shovel uppercuts, teep kicks. He's one of a kind, and he's beautiful to watch. But I'm gonna be giving picks for the entire card, so I'm gonna start with the first fight on the card. We're going to scroll down here all the way down to the early prelims with Ricky Simón and Vinicius Oliveira. Now, these two fighters are fighting in a bantamweight bout. Ricky Simón has quite a bit more experience in the UFC than Vinicius Oliveira, and Ricky has been in the top 15 of the bantamweight rankings for a while. I think he's still within the top 15, if I remember correctly, or he might have just been edged out by his last loss to Mario Batista. But he is a consistent fighter, wrestling heavy, great ground and pound, heavy strikes. Like, he has definitely taken it to many bantamweights in the top 20 to 25 in the UFC. Vinicius Oliveira came in. A lot of people know him from his highlight finish of Bernardo Sopa, jumping knee in the third round to finish him off. What a lot of people don't remember is that Bernardo took that on like a week or two's notice, I think, and he's not super experienced. He's like a 22, 23-year-old kid, and he was pounding Vinicius. He had taken him down twice in the first two rounds and was holding him down and beating him up. And Vinicius got to his feet in the halfway through the second round and was able to land a couple of good strikes on him, got him wobbled, but then couldn't get him out of there until almost the end of round 3. So he put a lot of damage on the kid, but he wasn't able to capitalize on it until much later. So I think that the obvious pick here is Ricky Simón, unless Vinicius lands an amazing strike that really wobbles him. I see Ricky being the one to take this fight. We're going to look at the significant strikes here. Vinicius, he's only got one fight in the UFC, and often these stats on UFC.com are a little skewed because they're only taking into account the fights that they've had in the UFC. Like Ricky, he's been in the UFC for years now, so he's pretty easily got consistent stats at this point. Vinicius, he's only had one fight, I think, in the UFC, and so he's his stats are going to be a little bit skewed based on that last performance where he was just beating up on Bernardo for the last round and a half. But we see Vinicius puts a little bit more output on the feet. It looks like they have close to the same significant strike ratio, and Ricky takes a few more per minute. He's got a good defense rate though, 60% is pretty good. But what we see here is Ricky's takedown average is almost 6, which is a terrifying number. Like 6 per 15 minutes is a lot. He's got that cardio wrestling style that like Merab Dvalishvili has. Oh, speaking of Merab, Ricky is the last person to beat him. So Ricky got him in a guillotine choke in the last round of their fight and was able to hold on to it and take a W over the number one contender, I would say, in the bantamweight rankings. And so then we have Vinicius, who got taken down by a 23-year-old who came in on 2 weeks' notice and was getting absolutely destroyed through ground and pound. And Ricky, I don't think there is any world in which he doesn't get Vinicius down. And the thing that will be interesting to see is if Vinicius can get back up. Now, Ricky had a little bit of difficulty with Mario Batista, but I think Mario Batista is a better wrestler than Vinicius Oliveira, and probably has a better ground game in general. I think we're going to see Ricky take this home pretty easily. I'm going to probably say in the first round, because like he's fought many people who are names in the bantamweight division: Rafael Assunção, Jack Shore, Brian Kelleher, Ray Borg, when Ray Borg was still fighting. But yeah, so we're going to say, and he also fights out of American Top Team Portland, which is where the bad guy Chael Sonnen used to fight out of, and so I can't pick against Chael. So we're going to pick Ricky. I'm going to say TKO or KO round 2. I think he's going to make him tired in the first round with his high-paced wrestling, get him to the ground, and ground and pound him until he gives up. All right, moving on to our second fight. We've got Rhys Saruya versus Carlos Hernandez. And I think Saruya is a good prospect. He's coming out of Japan. He's undefeated. He's definitely got a wrestling heavy style, kind of the same like ground and pound, like looking for submissions off the top. I haven't seen him work too much off of his back, but he's definitely a guy who is competent on the ground. I think that Carlos, if he wants to win, Carlos Hernandez, he's going to have to stay on the feet. But I don't see a world in which he's not going to be taken down by Saruya. And Carlos, poor guy, he just got beaten by Tatsuro Taira, another undefeated prospect out of Japan. And it seems like we're getting quite a few of these wrestle-heavy Japanese prospects coming up. I think Saruya came through the UFC, road to the UFC channels, and he's looking really good. I think that his grappling is going to be the thing that, we got an almost 7 takedown average per 15 minutes, 54% takedown accuracy. I think that 4 submission average per 15 minutes. That's pretty crazy. I don't think that this is going to be on the feet for very long, and I think that Saruya is going to be taking him down and either ground and pounding Carlos or subbing him. And I think that we're going to pick Saruya by submission in probably round 1. That's what we're going with. Moving up the card to Andrei Arlovsky versus Martin Buday. Or Buday. Andrei Arlovsky has been fighting in the UFC since maybe before many people who see this video were born. I think it's 2004. Let me scroll down. 2000. The year 2000. I was a child. And many of you were not born. Andrei Arlovsky was a great fighter. He's going to go into the Hall of Fame. Great fighter. But he is not the same man that he was even 10 years ago. He's been fighting. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. Got beat by Rogerio de Lima, which isn't a bad thing. Like, Rogerio de Lima's fairly good for the heavyweight division. He got beat by Dontel Mize, Waldo Cortez Acosta. He's just, and the wins that he's had in the last few years: Chase Sherman, Carlos Felipe, Jared Vandera, Jake Collier, and they were split decisions. I can't see him winning. I know that, and that's sad because I don't think Buday's that good actually. I mean, he's fine, but I think that if you put him up against like anyone in the the top 15 of the UFC heavyweight division, he's gonna get smoked. Like Marcin Tybura destroys him. You know, you put him up against, Volkov or Pavlovich. Any of those guys will completely destroy Martin Budaj. He doesn't really have a lot of other places to go, and Andrei Arlovsky is a win that he can get. I hope that Arlovsky does well, but I think Budaj is going to be enough to either hold him down and submit him, like Big Boy submit him with like a Kimura or an Americana or something like that, or just take him to a decision after, 3 rounds of really probably a very boring heavyweight fight. Arlovsky does still have power, and he could knock Budaj out, and that's possible. But I don't see Arlovsky, and the Arlovsky that I've seen in the last 3 fights that he's fought. I don't see him winning this. Like, Budaj has him on almost all the stats. Though Andrei Arlovsky has had enough fights that all of his stats are a little washed out, based on his But yeah, I think yeah, this one is pretty cut and dry. I don't have to say too much more about it. I love Andrei Arlovsky and some of his fights from the past, like his fight against Frank Mir, good fight. His fight with Travis Brown, that was a great knockout that he got. It was back and forth. Always love seeing Brendan Schaub get beat up. But yeah, these were 10 years ago. Moving on. Michelle Waterson-Gomez versus Jillian Robertson. This one has been actually very difficult for me to pick a fighter who wins, because Michelle Waterson-Gomez is a good striker, and she's a decent grappler, but she's 38 years old. If this was happening 5 years ago, I would say Jillian Robertson probably doesn't stand a chance. But Waterson-Gomez is on a 4-fight losing streak, and though many of those have been against really excellent fighters in her division, 2 of them are Mariana Rodriguez, Amanda Lemos, great fighter, Luana Pinheiro, up-and-comer, and she took her to a split decision. She's a great fighter. I just think that, she is slowly getting to that point where retirement is in the very near future. And Jillian Robertson is good. She's a good grappler. I don't think that she has anything for Waterson-Gomez on the feet. And if Michelle can stay on the feet, which I think she can, 70% takedown defense, I think that she can stay on the feet against Jillian Robertson, because I don't think Jillian Robertson actually has that great of takedowns, to be honest. Like, I'm not saying that she's not good. She's a good grappler, but I don't think that her takedowns are that effective. So I think that if she got the takedown, it would be dangerous for Michelle Waterson-Gomez. She'd have to really fight hard to not get submitted. But I think that on the feet, Waterson-Gomez has the advantage. Higher striking output. They have the same significant strike landed percentage, but I think that Waterson-Gomez is going to be able to take it to her. And I think this is the hard part, because is it going to be Michelle Waterson-Gomez that we've always seen, or is it going to be 38-and-a-half-year-old Michelle Waterson-Gomez, and she's just kind of done. But she's taken 2 good fights against Mariana Rodriguez and Amanda Lemos. I think I'm gonna have to go out on a limb here, pick the underdog, Michelle Waterson-Gomez, by decision. All right, moving on. Michelle Waterson-Gomez by decision. Finally getting to the prelims. Peyton Talbot versus Giannis Gamori. So Peyton is an up-and-comer who is considered to be a new phenom. He's got a very interesting personality, and I think that that's taking him a good ways. But he definitely has the chops to be something in the UFC if he continues on his win streak that he's on. He's in the bantamweight division. They're both 135. He beat Cameron Simon, which I think is a pretty big deal. He's Cameron Simon is South African. If you don't know, he trains with Dricus du Plessis, the middleweight champion, and he's kickboxing champion in his weight class. But I'm not going to say that he is like Cameron Simon is a world beater. I never saw him as a champion. He could be eventually, but I think that Peyton Talbot took it to him, beat him pretty well, and I think that he's got a lot of skills for being as young as he is. He's only 25, and we've got Giannis Gimori, who is he's a good fighter. Skilled, but he's been tested in the UFC, and he has not really seemed like he was up to the task, right? He fought William Gomes, and Gomes put him down. And Gomes beat him. Gomes is a good fighter, though. Like, he's definitely one of the he's on an 11 fight win streak. I mean, that's pretty good. But he's coming to the UFC, and he's looked pretty good. He beat Francis Marshall, who I think is a good fighter. Just had some bad luck recently, and I think that Giannis could give Peyton some issues if he does all the right things. But I think that and I also think that the betting line for this one is insane. Like, it makes me want to put some money on Gimori just because he's a plus 800. You could, if he pulls it out and like comes out of nowhere, gets a win. There's not much. I mean, like, it would give you so much money if you just bet a little bit, like a little sprinkle on there. I think Peyton's gonna win, obviously, but I think that it's gonna be a decent fight. I don't know if it's gonna be a round 1 KO, but I think that Peyton. We'll go round 1 KO, because I think that Peyton is going to be a little bit too much for Giannis. All right. Moving on to Charles Jourdain and Gene Silva. This is going to be, as well, I think this is going to be possibly the fight of the night, depending on how the main event goes. Charles Jourdain is a beast in the cage. He comes in with blood on his mind, and if you haven't seen his Sparta kick in his fight with who was that? That wasn't Burgos. Maybe it was Burgos. I think it was whoever he fought before Burgos. You should see that. It's a cool highlight. And he matched up against Sean Woodson last time, and I was upset because Sean Woodson's a freak of nature. Used to fight at heavyweight in boxing, and now he's fighting at featherweight. He's like 6'3". He's got a crazy body. And Charles Jourdain took him to a split decision, I think. Yeah, Jourdain is a good fighter. He's well rounded. He's great at striking, great at ground game. And I feel like if he'd been able to get Woodson down, I think he might have won that one. But I think that he beat Kron Gracie pretty easily. I think that Jourdain is an excellent fighter. Now, Gene Silva, coming out of Brazil, he's fighting under the Fighting Nerds banner, which has Carlos Prates and Cal Borralho as well. These guys are kind of a new team as far as I'm aware, but they're having a lot of success right now. And I think Silva, in his last fight, was very impressive against Weston Wilson. But I do think that Jourdain might be a bit more than he bargains for. it's so difficult to make a choice on this one because both of these guys are going to be like running at each other. So we're going to look at the stats and we're going to see if that helps us make a decision. We've got Charles Jourdain, reach is the same. He can kick a little bit further. He's a little bit taller. KO TKO, it might stay on the feet depending. Significant strikes, very similar, very similar. And grappling, yeah, it looks like Charles generally works off of his back for submissions. So, but Gene Silva looks like he's got a very good takedown defense. I think it's gonna play out on the feet. It'll be very interesting to see who wins. Silva's got some power punches. Jourdain, I don't think has the same amount of power, but I think that both of them could finish it on the feet. Charles also has kind of a more like, I would say, karate style of stand up versus Silva, who is more of a Muay Thai fighter in my eyes. Boxing, maybe kickboxing is a better way of putting that. I'm looking forward to seeing this fight. I think it's going to be a banger, and it's kind of a coin flip for me who's going to win. So I don't know. I think I'm gonna go with Jourdain by KO TKO in round 3 after he weathers the initial storm from Silva. All right, moving on. Cub Swanson versus Andre Fili. Andre has one of the best nicknames in MMA. His touchy Fili. I think that's pretty funny. But I think that this is going to be a good fight. Both these guys are veterans. Both of them have been in the UFC over 10 years. I'm sure. We can look at their records. I think it's probably something like 14 years for Cub, maybe longer, because he was in the WEC before. Yeah, so like right around 13 years, I think is probably where. 13 years is a long time to be taking the amount of damage that Cub has been taking since 2011. And I think Fili is probably around a decade. He's been there for about 10 years, probably. Let's see. Yeah, 11 years. So, yeah, I think that both of these guys have also fought a lot of people who are big names. Like we see on Fili's record, Yair Rodriguez, Max Holloway, Calvin Kattar, Artem Lobov, if we're going to say that that's a big name, Michael Johnson, Sadiq Youssef, Charles Jourdain, Bryce Mitchell, Nathaniel Wood, good fighter, Dan Ige, and then we've got Cub Swanson, who's fought everyone as well. Like, you look at this, we've got Chad Mendez, we've got Charles Oliveira, we've got Jeremy Stevens, Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway, Frankie Edgar, another Artem Lobov, Brian Ortega, Frankie Edgar, Renato Moicano, Shane Burgos. That was a rough 4-fight streak right there for Cub. I think that and you see that like for their last few fights they've been trading wins and losses. Looks like Cub's due for a loss. Looks like Fili's due for a win. Fili by decision, I think. I'm going to say decision because I don't know. I don't think that he's going to win. I feel like Cub's kryptonite, if it's going to be a finish, is his submissions. Like, someone might be able to sub him, but he doesn't get knocked out that frequently. Generally, it's something like Chikadze or Martinez, where they've hurt a part of his body and he goes down because of the damage that's been inflicted. I don't know if Andre Fili can inflict the amount of damage that he would need to finish Cub off. It just depends. Cub is also 40, I think. Yeah, 40 years old. Maybe the amount of damage that's necessary to finish him off is lower now. Fili is a good fighter. He's great at counter punches. Got a great flow when he's fighting in the stand up. I think that he's going to be able to pull this one off. I'm going to say by decision. And we're going to move on to, I think, the last fight of the prelims. Yeah, last fight of the prelims. Body Bags Joe Pyfer and Marc-Andre Powerbar Barrio. Both coming off a loss. They are fairly large dudes, but I think that Joe Pyfer definitely has the edge in power. Even though Barrio likes to scrap, I think that that's going to be the real deciding factor, is whether Barrio decides to stay safe and keep away from Joe Pyfer and his power hand, or if he's going to try to scrap with him and take a knockout. Because I don't think that Barrio has a ton of knockout wins in the UFC. I'm gonna check. He has a few. No, he has 2 knockout wins in the UFC. So a lot of his knockouts came prior to his stint in the UFC. It looks like he beat Julian Marquez by knockout, which was a standing TKO. And then he ground and pounded Abu Azaitar. I think that Joe Pyfer's tougher than Abu Azaitar to put away. Even everyone says that Joe Pyfer got like checked, like he got fraud checked by Jack Hermanson. I don't think that. I think Jack Hermanson's a great fighter, and I think he was just better than Joe Pyfer at this point in Joe Pyfer's career. Joe Pyfer is 27, which is not super old for a middleweight. He's got a lot of time still to learn, and I think that what he really needs, and I think he's in a great place to learn it, he needs to learn some grappling, a little bit more grappling. Not saying that he's not a good grappler, because he beat Gerald Meerschaert in a grappling contest, which is impressive, to say the least. Like, Meerschaert is a grappling fiend. But I think that if he can learn to put that in with his power punches, like go for, like fake a takedown. If like people really believe that you're going to try to take them down, which I don't think that people believe that Joe Pyfer is going to try to take them down. If they really believe that he's coming in to take them down, a big overhand right over the top, or an overhand left. I can't remember if he fights southpaw or orthodox. That's kind of embarrassing. But yeah, big overhand comes in and knocks someone out from a faked shot, fake double leg or something like that. I think that would add a lot to his skill. I think that Barrio is gonna always be right outside the top 15 as long as he's in the UFC. He's a little bit older, 34. I think that he's gonna be a stop for some of these guys who are not going anywhere. Like, you see the people who have beaten him. You've got Krzysztof Jotko, you've got Chidi Njokuani, Anthony Hernandez, Chris Curtis. These guys who are going to be in the bottom half of the top 15. I think that Joe Pyfer is possibly a middle top 15, and if he really gets his act together and rounds out his skill set, he'll be maybe a top middleweight, possibly, because he has that death touch power. It's just, can he put it on him, right? Can he land that punch? But yeah, I think I'm gonna pick Body Bags Joe Pyfer by knockout in round 1 or 2, because I think Barrio's going to try to mix it up with him on the feet, and I don't think he's going to have anything for him when it comes to power. Moving on to the main card, Ian Machado Gary and Michael Venom Page. Michael Venom Page taking the UFC by storm now, coming in from his stint in Bellator. Great fighter, very technical, very good at staying on the feet, staying out of range, landing when people don't think he can. He has a 79-inch reach, which is a lot for a welterweight. That's a very long reach for a welterweight. And he's got that bouncy, like, karate bladed style where he's coming in and out, throwing elbows from places that people don't expect. He's able to get jabs in, overhands in from way out. People, he's standing halfway across the octagon, and you blink, and he's hitting them with an elbow. I think that Kevin Holland fight really showed his technical ability. It didn't show his knockout power, which he has in spades. He's crushed people's skulls in. He's broken people's legs with kicks. I think that Page is a timing and technique over raw strength kind of guy, but I think that he is a very technical fighter, and I think that this is the biggest test of Ian Gary that we've seen yet. I think that it's going to be a tough fight for Gary if he thinks he's gonna win this. He seems like he's looking past him. I know that that's probably just him putting on a face. I don't understand how Gary is the favorite on this, because I mean he beat Jeff Neal. It was a split decision. That was a really close one. It could have gone either way. He did maul Neil Magny, but Neil Magny is not the fighter that Michael Page is. I saw him head kick D-Rod, but yet again, D-Rod maybe bottom 15 like level fighter. And the things that I've seen about Gary is that often he leaves himself open to taking damage in the early rounds. Like, he has almost been fraud checked a couple of times. I don't think he's a fraud. He's a good fighter. I think that he's like a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, a guy who might see the title, might see a title fight, but I don't think that he's the type of guy who's going to win a title fight. Michael Page quite possibly is going to see a title fight and win a title fight if he fights someone who is not a monster wrestler. I'm not saying that he doesn't have great takedown defense. He has great takedown defense. I'm just saying that some of these guys in the UFC are monsters in a way that Michael Page, I don't think, has had to see in Bellator. He's got 17 fights, and they mostly matched him up against people who were strikers. Douglas Lima beat him, knocked him out while he was showboating that one time. But I think that, and Logan Storley, who is a fantastic wrestler, beat him in a split decision. I think that it'll be really interesting to see. I would love to see Michael Page versus, and this is actually probably the best fight they could have made in the top 15 for Michael Page to show, because I don't think Ian Gary is going to try to grapple with him, even though he might have that in his back pocket or in the back of his mind. I don't think that Ian Gary will know he's in trouble until he's already wobbled, right? Michael Page is just so fast. I think both of these guys are just really fast strikers. I kind of wanted to see Ian Gary or Michael Page versus Stephen Thompson, but Stephen Thompson is getting up there in age, even though Michael Page is probably close to the same age as him. I think Michael Page is 37, I saw. Yeah, 37. He doesn't look like he's slowing down at all, though. He's definitely a fast... what is happening? A fast striker. Oh man, but I don't think that Gary's gonna win this one. But let's look at the stats. We got significant strikes landed per minute. We've only got Michael Page's stats from his fight with Kevin Holland. Look at the low amount of strikes he absorbed in that fight. I think that it's gonna be difficult for Ian Gary to beat Michael Venom Page, MVP, in this fight. I think that this is going to be Michael Page, possibly by KO, but I'm going to say decision. I think decision's going to be a little bit safer. I, however, think second round KO, it would be my next choice, because I think that Ian Gary, we're going to go with that. We're going to go with second round KO because I think Ian Gary quite possibly is going to be checked here. And I think that he has shown that he can be knocked out. He's been wobbled too many times for people to believe that he can't be. All right, moving on. We've got Mayra Bueno Silva versus Macy Chiasson. You know what? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. I don't ever really want to see Mayra Bueno Silva fight again after that fight that she had with Raquel Pennington for the vacant bantamweight title. That was such a depressing fight to have to watch. Macy Chiasson has looks like almost 6-inch reach advantage. She's about 5 inches taller. I'm hoping that Macy can just knock her out. I think that their stats are very similar. Mayra Bueno Silva might get it done by submission. I don't really care. Mayra Bueno Silva is the type of fighter that really gives women's MMA a bad name because you saw that her conditioning was just awful. Like she barely got out of the first round with her conditioning, and I don't know how Raquel Pennington didn't finish her at any point in the rest of that fight. She also takes PEDs. So Macy Chiasson is a fine fighter. Mostly, I'm not gonna talk about it for very long. Chiasson, I'm hoping by KO, but we'll put decision because who knows, right? She almost beat Irene Aldana. If Aldana hadn't got that up kick to the liver, she would have had her, I think. She's the next best person, and I hope that she beats Mayra Bueno Silva because I want Mayra Bueno Silva to retire. All right, moving on. Anthony Smith versus Roman Dolidze. Now this fight is going to be interesting. It is what was the cursed fight between Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree. Khalil Roundtree pops for PEDs, which I don't think he was intentionally taking them, but he said it was a tainted supplement. It's hard to say with that kind of stuff, but Khalil Roundtree does not strike me as the type of person to intentionally cheat. I think that, and then he was replaced by Carlos Ulberg, and then Jamal Hill was replaced because he has a knee injury apparently by Anthony Smith, and then Ulberg picked up an injury, and he was replaced by Roman Dolidze, who's a 185er. Now, Anthony Smith has been saying that everyone's afraid of him. I don't think that that's true. I don't think that the light heavyweight division is filled with cowards who don't want to fight Anthony Smith. But getting him to step up on short notice, Roman Dolidze has a good team behind him. He fights out of Extreme Couture, and I think that he's got a chance here. Dolidze's pretty big for the middleweight division, and I think that he beat Jack Hermanson, which is a good fight, and he lost to Marvin Vettori, who I think Roman Dolidze really needs someone whom he can knock out in order to win. I don't know if anything could knock out Marvin Vettori. He has a head made of granite. Like they say that Alex Pereira looks like a stonehead Easter Island head guy. Marvin Vettori is the one who has a real stone head. It's literally made out of Italian marble. You can't break it. He's just taking Jared Cannonier fight shots right to the dome, and it doesn't even wobble him. And so I don't think Dolidze was going to beat him at any point. And then he lost to Imavov, which is sad because Imavov is kind of a jerk, but he was a little outclassed there. I think that Dolidze, though, if he's big enough, will be able to fight Anthony Smith. And I think Anthony Smith is someone whom he can knock out. Even though, crazily, Johnny Walker didn't knock him out when he had the chance. He had him wobbled multiple times, but couldn't do anything about it. Khalil Roundtree knocked him out. I think Dolidze might get it done. I like Anthony Smith, though. just getting a little old, I, which is maybe I'm wrong about that because it looks like Dolidze's older than him, but he's taken a lot more damage I think than Dolidze. Over the course of years, Anthony Smith has fought over 50 fights, whereas Dolidze's fought 15. Maybe the fight experience, the fight IQ, is going to be the deciding factor in this one. I don't know. Like, this one's a close one for me. I think that Anthony Smith, if he comes out and he's ready and he's good to go, if he looks like he did against Vitor Petrino, he might put it on Dolidze. And I think that taking a fight at a higher weight might be good for Dolidze because like maybe it's tough for him to cut down because he looked really tired in that Imavov fight. I feel like his ability to sustain the output that he was putting out was diminished. So we'll see. It looks like they've got similar KO TKO sub decision ratios. They get to the second round, it looks like, more frequently. Their significant strike outputs look like they are on the side of Anthony Smith. And then the grappling looks like it's on the side of Roman Dolidze by a small amount. We don't even have odds for this one yet. But they've got very similar like height and reaches. Only difference is a couple inches in height and a couple inches in leg reach. Oh man, this one's tough. Dolidze was in a fight camp for a fight that was happening in, I think it was in June, early June. But then that fight got canceled, and so he took a break. I don't know. We'll go with Smith because I think that's the safe route. I think he might win by decision. I think that Roman Dolidze could easily knock him out though, and we'll just see. I think the fight IQ might be the thing that makes the difference. Dolidze doesn't make great decisions, and Anthony Smith is actually a pretty smart fighter. I think that's how he's been eking out these decision wins against some of these guys that he's been fighting for years. All right. Not saying that he could have been the light heavyweight champion by making a different decision in that fight against John Jones, but that wasn't a great. That might be an argument there about it. It's not really a fight IQ move. It's a hey, you could make John Jones come back and fight you again in a better circumstance after you've become the champion. But who am I to say that? I'm not fighting. So, our next fight, Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez. Diego Lopez taking the UFC by storm. A big jump in competition from Sodiq Yusuff, who I think was ranked like 12 when they fought. Something like that. Now Brian Ortega, who I think is ranked 3 right now, who just beat Yair Rodriguez by submission in the third round? Third round? I don't know. It didn't say. Let's check. We'll get both of these open. That was a good fight. If you haven't seen that, submission round 3. If you see that fight, Brian was in trouble in the early round, in the first round, and he was able to come back, grapple with a grappling heavy approach, and tire Yair out and get him with a modified arm triangle choke that was a thing of beauty. He also has a video on YouTube where he breaks that down. It was a great fight, and yet again, Brian Ortega has only lost to champions in the featherweight division. Max Holloway. Even though he didn't look great against Max Holloway, and Max was teaching him how to defend strikes while they were fighting, and he got beat up on by Alexander Volkanovski. Those are two of the best fighters in the world, in pound for pound, anywhere. He lost to Yair Rodriguez because his arm dislocated. It wasn't like a issue of skill on his part, and then he beat him in the rematch. So I'm not going to say that Diego Lopez is going to come in here and just destroy Brian Ortega. Now, he could. I think that Diego Lopez isn't as technical a striker as Yair Rodriguez, but I think that Diego Lopez has more power and he's much more ferocious than Yair Rodriguez. And I think that if Brian hadn't been able to stay out of the way of some of those attacks that Yair was giving him in that first round, he could have put him away. And I think that that's the route that Diego Lopez has to win this. He If he takes him in the first round and gives him a something to make him think about, like a big shot somewhere. I don't understand how he's the favorite. It gives him a big shot, something that wobbles him, something that like. But he's already shown that like if he gets wobbled in the first round, that he'll be able to, come back from it. But I think Diego Lopez has that killer instinct to hop on him and really like finish the fight. I'm gonna say that I think that Diego Lopez might just be at a loss against someone this good though. Not saying that he's not amazing. I think that he's one of the better fighters in the featherweight division, and I feel like a rematch against Movsar Evloev would be great to see because he took that fight on short notice and almost beat him. And he hasn't been out of the first round since then. He's a good fighter. I just think that Brian Ortega has the experience at this high level to be able to keep him from defeating him in the first round and be able to take him into deep waters. And I don't know if Diego Lopez gets tired. He didn't look like he did against Evloev really, but are more than Evloev was. And I've never really seen Brian Ortega get tired, even though he's been like really lit up in those 5-round fights against Holloway and Volkanovski. I think that Brian has the edge in experience, and I think that his defensive grappling from his back is going to make the difference. I think that he's going to sub Diego Lopez in round 2 or 3, and I think that Lopez is going to have to bounce back down and take a couple more fights before he's able to fight against the guys at the top of the division. Not saying that he's not going to make it, because I think he's a phenomenal fighter, but I think Ortega's going to take this one. And now we come. Oh, well, and also Brian Ortega, he went off into the desert and broke his talons and his beak off, and had to wait for him to regrow. So he's a completely new eagle. If you guys haven't seen that, if you guys haven't seen his interview on that, it's a very interesting interview. He has a lot to say, and it's very inspiring if you're into like inspirational analogies and stuff like that. But he said after taking that loss to Volkanovski, he had to really reinvent himself. And so if you want to watch him talk about that, he's a brand new eagle, guys, and I don't know if Diego Lopez can handle the new eagle that Brian T. City Ortega is. So we'll see. But yeah, next fight, Alex Pereira versus Yuri Prochazka 2, the UFC light heavyweight championship fight that everyone wanted to see. I don't think that there's any fan of MMA or UFC that is not excited about this fight. It's going to be amazing. If it gets out of the first couple of rounds, or if it gets stopped in the first, I think everyone's excited to see this one. I think that there are some arguments that the first fight that they had was stopped a little prematurely. Yuri was still moving. He still seemed conscious. He still seemed like he was defending himself. I have a jiu-jitsu background, and so like the way that he fell, he could have entered into a leg entanglement. I don't know if Yuri is the type of guy to do that, but I think if he had been given the chance, he might have been able to survive that. I know that everyone's scared of Pereira's power, but I think that Yuri might have been able to shake that off, because Yuri is the type of guy who has to take a bit of punishment before he's really into the fight.
Like you saw that in the fight that he had against Rakic. Like that first round was a Rakic win, right? Like if it had kept going like that, Yuri would have lost the decision. But he started taking a few of those punches to the dome. Like if you've seen his fight against Volkan Uzdemir, he starts blocking punches with his forehead, like just like gritting and and taking those punches. Like his fight with Glover Teixeira was an absolute war. It, I don't know if he can really get into the fight until he has taken some significant damage. Now, the issue with that is that if Alex Pereira damages you, you might just be out cold immediately. That left hook will put people to sleep. It comes out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, people's eyes are rolling. You saw it in his fight against Jamal. You saw it against his fight with Izzy. You saw it against his fight with Sean Strickland. If he has a death touch, man, and it's important to not take a ton of those strikes. But if Yuri can stay on the outside, not take too many leg kicks, and then blitz in with his like bladed karate kind of style, with those shovel uppercuts and the overhands that he can throw with some of that spinning. The spinning elbows, spinning back fist. If he can work some of that unorthodox striking in, I think he might be able to take it to Alex Pereira. I think that these guys both have an 80% KO rate. Yuri has a 97% finish rate, which is insanity for someone at the top of a division to say that they have a 97% finish rate. Um, their strikes landed per minute, both over 5. Their significant strikes landed around 60 for both of them. Yuri absorbs a few more than Alex does, but like I was saying, he kind of has to in order to like really switch on. And while Alex doesn't do a lot of takedowns, his takedown defense is pretty high as well as Yuri's. I feel like the only time that Alex really showed any weaknesses was against Jan Blachowicz. And I hate to say it, but I feel like Jan might have won that fight with his ability to take him down and control him. I don't think Yuri's as big a dude as Jan Blachowicz, though. Um, I'm happy to see the odds on this one are as tight as they are. Because like some of these didn't make any sense to me. I think that it's tough to make a choice on this. They're both such. They're not even similar fighters, but the outcome of their fights are so similar that it's tough to make a decision on who's going to win this one, because we could get a fight just like we had with the last one where Alex Pereira gets like lands a bomb on him and he's just asleep again, Yuri. Or we could have Yuri, because he won the first round. It was 10 nines from every scorecard in their first fight for Yuri. Yuri was piecing him up a bit. Not saying that he was like destroying him, but he was outstriking him, and he was landing the better shots. I'm gonna say that Prohaska wins this one by maybe by KO TKO or decision. I'm gonna go KO TKO in round 3. I think that Yuri, if he can weather the early storm, well, the issue is that the more Yuri's legs are going to get beat up by Pereira. And that was kind of the issue in the first fight. Was I felt like while Pereira didn't win the first round, he was definitely investing in taking Yuri off his feet. If Yuri can wrestle, though, and take Poatan down in one of the first 2 rounds and spend most of one of those rounds on top, he might be able to salvage his legs in for the later rounds. And that investment that Poatan puts in wouldn't be as big an issue. I think that, and I might just be picking with my heart. I love both of these guys. They're both great fighters, but Prohaska has a very special place in my heart, just because of his eclectic style, his interesting outlook on life. He's a very interesting dude. I'm hoping that he can pull it out. Not to say that I don't like Alex Pereira, but I feel like it will be interesting to see where Pereira goes in Prohaska. I think I would love to see Alex versus Yuri 3 in the near future because they're going to have to save some other card soon. And I think that for that to happen, Prohaska has to win this one. So just so that I can see more of him, I want Prohaska to win. And I'm going to say, oh, man, it's so hard. Because he could get a sub. He might get a sub, but it's, oh, man. I'm going to say KO TKO round 3. That's what my gut's telling me. That's what I'm going to go with. And hopefully one of those first 2 rounds he's not getting his leg beat up by that leg kick, the calf kick that Alex Pereira throws out. And so he'll be able to be a little bit stronger on that. We're gonna go with that. I think that Alex Pereira is gonna have a long night if he gets taken down by Yuri Prohaska more than a couple of times. And I think that if Yuri can't get him down and is taking leg kicks, he's not going to last past round 3 or 4, probably 3. Yeah, man. Yeah, Prohaska, KO TKO, round 3. Thanks for watching. I'm hoping to be able to do more of these breakdowns for more UFC events. I think that I'm probably going to try to put one out, one a week, and maybe also do one after the fights, maybe a matchmaking, like where are they going to go from here kind of thing based on the wins and losses. I'm not going to get too much into like MMA news, stuff like that. I think there's plenty of people out there doing that. I just love the breakdown of the skill stuff. And maybe I might do some like breakdowns of like fighters and their particular styles and what they've shown to be effective and like it'd be great to take like Yuri or Alex and do a technique breakdown on them and show some of their best weapons or show why they stand in the stance that they stand in, or where I think that they can improve. Not that I'm an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been watching MMA for a while now. I train BJJ. Like there's a lot of stuff that I see that I feel like is worth talking about, and I would love to have you guys comment down below and let me know what you'd like to see. I'd love to have conversations with you guys, and I'm looking forward to putting out some more videos. You've watched Pancratos MMA today, and I hope that you'll like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.